The sky burned blue. It wasn't fire, not really. It was something colder, something that hummed like thunder but sang like metal tearing apart the air. People stopped in the streets that morning. Farmers in open fields, children on their way to school, soldiers staring at the horizon from their bases. They all looked up at the strange light that shimmered above Earth like a wounded halo. It began at 0742, Greenwich Mean Time. By 0743, every global satellite feed had gone dark. The invasion began at 0744. No one expected it to happen this way. For decades, humanity had watched the stars with hope, not fear. We had sent messages of peace coded in radio, drifting through the cosmos. We thought we were ready for a reply. But the reply did not come in words. It came in ships, thousands of them, silver, vast, and eerily silent. They did not use thrusters or wings. They simply appeared, each one folding out of the light like reality was a curtain being peeled back. Over the Pacific, the first city vanished. Honolulu. No explosion, no debris, just a ripple of light, and then nothing but water where land had been. At 0748, world leaders were connected on emergency channels. At 0750, every defense network fired missiles, lasers, railguns, nothing. Touched them. They didn't even notice us. The alien fleet moved like gods, among sparks, their ships rearranging continents, as though they were shuffling a deck of cards. No signals, no warnings, no attempts to communicate. Only cold, absolute control. The first global estimate predicted total defeat within 3 hours. That was when Commander Elara received the order that would change everything. She was standing in the subterranean command room beneath Colorado Ridge, one of Earth's last strategic bunkers. The walls were trembling, not from explosions but from the strange atmospheric pressure the alien craft emitted. The lights flickered and the comm screens were flooded with static. Yet amid the chaos, Elara stood still, tall, calm, her brown hair tied in a soldier's knot, her eyes fixed on the holographic map bleeding with red signals. "Commander," said a young officer, his voice trembling, "they've taken out orbital defense. We have no satellites left, no drones, nothing." "Then we fight blind," she replied quietly. "Ma'am, how?" "They're rewriting the planet." Elara turned to face the wall where the tactical feed once displayed Earth's defense grid. Now it was just static snow. She drew a slow breath and said something that would later echo through history. "Then let's remind them what it means to fight human." Outside, the world was falling apart over Tokyo. The sky was a mirror, reflecting clouds that weren't there. Over New York, gravity itself trembled. People floated for seconds before crashing to the ground, as alien manipulation tore at Earth's magnetic core. Across Africa, radio waves screamed with unknown frequencies, like voices whispering through static, not in words but in feelings, fear, pity, amusement. It was as though the invaders didn't come to conquer, but to observe. They watched humanity struggle, fascinated by the small creatures that dared to resist them. By 0805, the war was over, or should have been. 90% of the world's defense grid was offline. Cities had vanished. Communications shattered. The aliens had proven what they were, an intelligence so far beyond us that our weapons were like insects throwing sand at a storm. And yet, they had made one mistake. They had underestimated humanity's heart. Deep within that underground bunker, Commander Elara gave one final command, not to destroy, but to unite. All remaining energy cores were rerouted to one system, an experimental network built years ago under Project Dawnstar. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a mirror, a field that reflected energy frequencies, rewriting them through chaos algorithms. In theory, it shouldn't have worked. In practice, it did something no one expected. At 0809, Earth's skies flickered for one single, heart-stopping instant. The alien ships hesitated. Every sensor in the universe would later record that fraction of a second when their invincible shields faltered. And in that heartbeat, humanity struck back. The invasion that was supposed to end humanity in hours began to end for them in minutes, and the war for the soul of the universe had just begun. For a fleeting moment, silence reigned. It wasn't the calm of peace. It was the silence of shock, the kind that grips a planet when it realizes the impossible is happening. The alien fleet hovered above Earth, their silver hulls reflecting sunlight in impossible angles, while below, humans held their breath. Commander Elara Haynes didn't. She moved. The experimental system, Project Dawnstar, hummed beneath Colorado Ridge, its energy conduits glowing like veins of fire in the cold concrete. Every scientist, every engineer, every soldier present had been trembling a moment ago, some with fear, some with awe. Now all eyes turned to Elara as she pressed the final sequence. "Do it," she said. Her voice was calm, but it carried a weight that made every heartbeat in the room synchronize. The system responded. It was beautiful. The air shimmered, bending light and energy into a lattice no human eye had ever seen. Every strike the aliens had thrown at Earth, missiles, energy beams, gravity pulses, was reflected, redirected, twisted into something new. Something alive. And then came the first sound, a deafening, almost musical crack as the energy cascaded into the alien ships. It wasn't explosions in the conventional sense. It was as if the universe itself was correcting a mistake. Ships that had seemed invincible flickered, their hulls breaking apart like glass under pressure. And the aliens, for the first time, hesitated. From the skies, Lieutenant Mara Singh watched the scene unfold. She was in a fighter squadron orbiting above the Pacific. Normally, humans would have been useless here, a token display of courage. Now, she and her squadron could see what the Project Dawnstar system had done. The invaders' attacks rebounding on them, fracturing into patterns of chaos and beauty. They're faltering, Mara shouted, disbelief slicing her voice. Her co-pilot's face was pale but lit with something fierce. Hope. Hope that burns brighter than fear, and Earth fought back. People across the planet in every corner joined in their own way. Cities without communication improvised. Soldiers with nothing but rifles aimed at alien drones. Civilians driving makeshift vehicles carrying magnets and energy disruptors. Hackers repurposing old satellites and amateur drones. It wasn't strategy. It was instinct. It was humanity itself, raw and unyielding, surging forward. Even those trapped under rubble or trapped in shattered skyscrapers felt it. The smallest children, looking at the alien crafts hovering above their homes, screamed not in terror but in defiance. Somewhere, a street musician struck a drum in rhythm with the chaos, and for a heartbeat, the pulse of Earth itself matched that rhythm. The aliens tried to adapt, but they had underestimated something fundamental. Humans weren't just intelligent. They were unpredictable. They were emotional. They were stubborn beyond logic. Every reflection, every chaotic energy burst that Dawnstar produced became a weapon shaped by humanity's very essence. Courage fused with love. Desperation fused with creativity. By Aero 812, the first alien ship collapsed entirely, its energy disintegrating into shards that fell harmlessly into the atmosphere. It should have been a minor victory. Instead, it sent a ripple through the entire fleet. Where there had been confidence, now there was doubt. Where there had been silence, now there were alerts. Alien commands clashing with one another, their hierarchy unsteady for the first time. Commander Elara didn't smile. She didn't relax. She knew better than anyone that the fight was far from over, but she allowed herself a single thought whispered to no one. They think they can break us. They don't know what it means to be human. On the ground, Lieutenant Jonas Calder, leading a small squad in Berlin, saw the alien walker units falter as their own weapons turned inward. He grinned fiercely, his body trembling from adrenaline. He shouted orders that were less tactical and more instinct, and somehow it worked. Humans who had been scattered and terrified began moving in coordinated strikes, using terrain, ingenuity, and sheer willpower to dismantle the invaders' footholds. In that moment, Earth itself seemed alive. Forests, mountains, rivers, and cities. Everything became part of the resistance. Humanity's unpredictability was like a pulse that the aliens couldn't comprehend, a signal they hadn't seen in any corner of the galaxy. By 0815, the world held its breath again, but this time it was not fear. It was anticipation. Because for the first time since the invasion began, humans had the upper hand. And yet, deep in her mind, Elara knew the truth. This victory, sudden and breathtaking, was just the beginning. The aliens weren't careless. They were calculating, and if they survived this minute, they would return stronger, smarter, and even more relentless. Still, as the sun reflected off the last trembling alien hulls, humanity had proved something undeniable. They would not bow. They would not break. And even against forces beyond imagination, they could rise. For the first time that day, the planet exhaled, because humans weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to remind the universe that courage, heart, and unyielding spirit could turn the tide of any war, even one that was supposed to last hours. Somewhere deep in the alien command nexus, there was confusion. It was subtle at first, a hesitation in their energy pulses, a flicker in their communications, a fraction of a second where order faltered. The invaders, vast and precise, had never encountered such chaos. In their history, civilizations bent quickly, resources were predictable, minds were easy to map. But humans were different. On Earth, the chaos was beautiful. Commander Elara Haynes stood before the massive projection map in the Colorado Ridge bunker. Every red dot that had once symbolized a collapsed city was now shifting. Some were being reclaimed. Human flags, digital, painted, improvised, marked liberated zones. The unthinkable was happening. Humanity was not just surviving. Humanity was taking the fight to the invaders. A young communications officer, Aiden, approached her with a trembling tablet. "Commander, we intercepted something, a signal. It's not just energy, it's thought or intention. They're communicating with each other. And they're afraid." Elara tilted her head. "Afraid?" "Yes, ma'am. Their network is collapsing. They're responding to our signals, the ones bouncing from Project Dawnstar. It's like they can't predict what we'll do next. They're panicking." Elara's lips tightened. A small, dangerous smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "Then let's give them a reason to fear humans even more." Across the world, humanity began to synchronize instinctively, like a single organism. Fighters in orbit adjusted their angles to reflect energy bursts. Soldiers on the ground improvised traps and diversions. Engineers turned old satellites into mirrors that doubled the reflected attacks. And civilians became the greatest weapon of all. A girl named Lila, no older than 12, climbed onto the roof of her school in Paris. She held a makeshift radio transmitter patched with scraps and wires. Her brother had been taken by the alien forces hours earlier. Trembling with anger and grief, she pressed the button. A pulse shot out, not powerful in a conventional sense, but precise. It carried patterns of sound, rhythm, and resonance. Project Dawnstar picked it up, amplified it, and sent it into the alien fleet. The effect was instantaneous. Ships wavered, faltered, then scattered like leaves caught in a storm. No human knew how she did it. No human knew why it worked. But it did. Across continents, similar acts of ingenuity rippled outward. An old mechanic in Johannesburg rigged a citywide power grid to emit pulsed magnetic fields that disrupted alien navigation. In Rio de Janeiro, a street artist's neon lights became a reflector for Dawnstar energy bursts. Humanity had become unpredictable on a global scale. Every act, small or large, contributed to a symphony the aliens couldn't decode. Meanwhile, aboard one of the alien command vessels, their leader, a being of thought more than flesh, struggled to adapt. Every plan they had relied upon, every calculation, crumbled. They had expected resistance, but not this. Not humans. Not creativity intertwined with raw emotion. Not courage that flared brighter than fear. Back on Earth, Commander Elara surveyed the battlefield. For the first time, she allowed herself a deep breath. The initial panic had subsided. The streets were still chaos, yes, but it was chaos humans controlled. And in every corner of the planet, hearts beat in a new rhythm. A rhythm of defiance, of unity, of fire that no alien technology could extinguish. Elara turned to her team. "We're doing more than surviving. We're showing them that humans are not a puzzle. Humans are a storm. And storms cannot be predicted." Lieutenant Jonas Calder, battered and exhausted from ground combat, laughed. It was not joy. It was disbelief. "A storm, huh? They didn't see this coming." "No," Elara said softly. "They didn't, and they still don't." As Project Dawnstar sent pulses across the globe, the alien fleet began to fracture. Communication between their ships broke down entirely. Their ships drifted, some colliding, others plummeting into oceans or deserts. Their fear was palpable. A sensation humans could never fully comprehend but could sense all the same. And humans? Humans were alive in a way the aliens could not anticipate. They were tired, injured, grieving. But they were alive. Somewhere in the skies above New York, A single fighter jet spiraled upward. Mara Singh, battered and bleeding, pressed the button to fire a pulse mirror. She looked down at the city, shattered but still breathing, and for the first time she allowed herself a thought that had seemed impossible just hours ago. We can win this. It was a whisper, fragile as a candle in the wind. But across Earth, that whisper became a roar, because the universe had never seen a species like humans. And for the first time, it would learn that the heart of humanity could shatter fear itself. The dawn that followed was unlike any other in human history. It wasn't peaceful. Not yet, but it was alive. The sun rose, through a sky laced with silver, debris and shattered fragments of alien vessels. Clouds burned with color, violet, blue, gold, reflecting the remains of ships that once hovered like gods. Humanity had done the unthinkable. They had forced a retreat, but Elara Haynes knew better than to call it victory. She stood on the observation deck above Colorado Ridge as the wind screamed through fractured windows. Below her, the earth hummed with energy. Cities trying to rebuild, soldiers regrouping, civilians gathering in stunned silence. For the first time in hours, she could see the horizon again, and above it, a scar, a colossal rip in the sky, faint but glowing, where the first alien ships had folded into reality. It pulsed like a wound, and through it something still watched. A voice came through the static of her headset. "Commander, we've decoded part of their transmission. It's not just tactical data, it's emotion, confusion. They don't understand us." Elara closed her eyes, the wind tugging at her hair. "They're not the first," the officer hesitated. "Ma'am, every empire in history has misunderstood humanity at first," she said softly, "until they learned the hard way that we don't stop when we should. We don't surrender when it's smart. We fight because it's what we are." Far above, in the upper layers of the atmosphere, Lieutenant Mara Singh's squadron continued their runs. The alien fleet was scattered but not gone. Some ships still lingered in orbit, damaged, reassembling, regrouping. They moved differently now, cautious, fragmented, wary. "They're adapting," Mara said over the comms. "They're learning from our moves." Elara's voice came through like steel. "Then we move faster. Humans improvise. They can't." At the same moment, deep in the Pacific Ocean, a massive surge of light erupted. From the depths, an alien construct began to emerge, one that had been dormant since before the first wave. It rose like a city of glass, humming with quiet power. It wasn't an attack. It was something stranger, an anchor. The aliens weren't retreating. They were calling reinforcements. Within minutes, energy readings spiked across every remaining defense hub on Earth. The skies began to shimmer again, not with ships but with something else, a gateway. Elara stared at the readings in silence. The air around her team filled with tension so thick it was almost physical. She turned to Aiden, the young communications officer. "How long?" He swallowed. 10 minutes, maybe less. "And if they finish opening that gateway, Earth won't survive it," she finished. Elara took a slow breath, then spoke a single sentence that none of them would forget. "Then we don't wait for them. We go through it first." There was silence in the bunker. "Ma'am?" Jonas Calder's voice crackled through from Berlin. "You can't be serious. We can't survive out there." "We couldn't survive down here either," she replied. "But that didn't stop us." Project Dawnstar's energy had stabilized enough to generate a focused surge, one that could, in theory, open a mirror path into the same fold space the aliens used. No human had ever attempted such a thing. No human should. But Elara had learned something the invaders hadn't. Fear was a tool, not a master. Within minutes, the plan was in motion. Engineers rerouted power grids, soldiers secured perimeter stations, and pilots volunteered to accompany the commander through the unknown. As the system charged, the entire facility vibrated. The sound was unlike anything earthly, deep, resonant like the hum of existence itself. Mara's voice came through the comm. "Commander, atmospheric stability's collapsing. If you're going to do this, you need to do it now." "Copy that," Elara said. She placed her hand on the console. "Initiate full jump sequence." A blinding sphere of light consumed the chamber. The team held their breath as the air itself bent inward. Then, with a sound like thunder collapsing upon itself, they were gone. From the outside, the Colorado Ridge bunker vanished in an instant, leaving behind a crater of molten earth. For a long moment, the world was still. Then, high above the planet, a new light appeared inside the alien gateway, smaller than the others, but burning far brighter. It was humanity, crossing the edge of impossible. Inside the fold, Elara and her strike team saw a realm that defied understanding. Space was fluid, colors alive, time fractured. Alien vessels hung suspended in silence, their silver hulls glimmering like frozen lightning. The humans' breath fogged their visors as they stared, awed and terrified. Aiden whispered, "Where are we?" Elara's eyes were fixed ahead, where the vast alien nexus pulsed like a living heart. "Inside their world," she said. "Now let's show them ours." For the first time in the invaders' long history, their realm had been breached, and humanity, fragile, furious, fearless, had stepped into the very core of the impossible. Inside the fold, time and space had no mercy for human senses. Colors moved like liquid, shapes bent upon themselves, and sounds came not from the ears, but the mind. Commander Elara Haynes felt her heart hammer like a war drum. Every step forward was a step into the unknown, yet every instinct screamed that this was the battlefield humanity had been born for. Her team moved with precision, though their nerves quivered. Lieutenant Mara Singh adjusted her visor, trying to focus on the alien nexus ahead. Its surface pulsed with energy, alive with thought, a massive lattice that seemed to extend infinitely. Ships hung frozen around it like satellites orbiting a heartbeat. "Do they see us?" Aiden whispered, voice barely audible over the hum that filled their helmets. "They know we're here," Elara said, "and that scares them more than our weapons ever could." The alien nexus was not just a command center. It was a consciousness and collective, vast and unlike anything humans had ever encountered. Every pulse, every shimmer radiated thought, intention, judgment. It observed, it analyzed, it calculated, and it hesitated. Humanity's audacity was a paradox to them. Elara signaled for the team to move forward. Each step felt like moving through water, but heavier, denser, like the universe itself was resisting them. Mara raised her weapon, not for firing, but to act as a beacon. The energy from Project Dawnstar resonated through it, translating human will into raw power. Suddenly, the Nexus reacted. A wave of energy surged outward, not destructive but invasive, probing their minds. Visions flickered before them, cities burning, oceans boiling, humans as fragile as insects. The aliens expected fear. They expected submission. Instead, they found defiance. Jonas Calder gritted his teeth as images threatened to overwhelm him. "They're trying to read us," he shouted. "Commander, we can't hold nothing," Elara snapped. "They think in absolutes. Humans are infinite in possibilities. Let them feel it." She placed her hand on the energy conduit, channeling Dawnstar's resonance. Her emotions poured into the system. Fear, grief, anger, hope, love, raw and unfiltered. Mara and the others followed instinctively, letting the pulse of humanity flow through them, weaving a pattern that was chaotic, unpredictable, unstoppable. The Nexus pulsed back not violently but in confusion. Shards of its structured consciousness bent, twisted, recoiling from the force of human will. They can't process it," Aiden whispered, awe mixed with fear. "Every calculation they've made, wrong." And then came the moment that would define history. A wave of light exploded outward from the Nexus, engulfing the frozen alien ships. It didn't destroy them. It didn't obliterate them. It reprogrammed them. Energy that had once been used to enslave and annihilate was twisted, inverted, and redirected. A mirror of human ingenuity. Ships that had once loomed like gods now drifted inert, their minds disoriented. The aliens themselves recoiled as if touched by something incomprehensible. For the first time, the collective consciousness experienced emotion it had never known. Fear of the unpredictable. Elara could feel it, not in words, but in the resonance that filled her mind. They weren't just struggling to respond. They were terrified that humans could adapt beyond reason, that humans could not be contained, she whispered almost to herself. "You wanted to see humanity. Now you are." Mara Singh's voice cracked with adrenaline. "We're controlling it?" "No," Elara said, her eyes fixed on the pulsing lattice. "We're showing them what it means to be human. And humans cannot be calculated, cannot be contained, cannot be predicted. That is our strength. That is why they will lose." Energy rippled through the fold space like waves in a storm, sweeping over every alien vessel. Systems overloaded, hierarchies fractured, commands contradicted each other, ships collided, tumbled, and fell into the void. The alien consciousness writhed, unable to reconcile what was happening. And in that chaos, humans advanced. Step by step, heartbeat by heartbeat, they moved closer to the core of the alien nexus, not to destroy it, but to make it understand something fundamental. Power alone does not dominate life. Heart does. Spirit does. Will does. Jonas Calder looked at Elara. If we keep going, we could end it. Not just the invasion, but them. Elara shook her head. No, we don't destroy, we teach. That is the difference between humans and them. And that difference will ensure they never forget us. The nexus pulsed one last time, a quiver that felt almost like awe. For the first time in eons, the alien collective encountered a force it could not predict, could not conquer, and could not extinguish. Humanity was not just alive. Humanity was unstoppable, and the universe, vast, indifferent, and ancient, was about to take notice. The alien nexus pulsed, trembling like a living being struck by revelation. Inside the fold space, humanity stood firm, a small but unyielding force against a consciousness that had never known uncertainty. Commander Elara Haynes surveyed the lattice of energy around them, her chest rising and falling with the rhythm of a world on the brink of awakening. Every pulse, every flicker of light carried one undeniable truth. Humans could not be predicted, controlled, or broken. Mara Singh's squadron, orbiting near the outer reaches of the fold, watched in awe as alien ships writhed and faltered. The invaders' technology, once flawless, now functioned in chaos. Systems that had been absolute were bending to human unpredictability. And all because a small species had chosen courage over fear. They're learning, Mara whispered, almost in disbelief. No, Elara corrected, her voice firm. They're understanding. For centuries, the alien collective had dominated every encounter. Their fleets had crushed planets, their strategies had reduced civilizations to mere statistics. But never before had they faced a species whose heart was stronger than logic, whose imagination could twist reality in ways that no algorithm could measure. The lesson was searing through the invaders' consciousness. They began to perceive for the first time that life was not a sequence of predictable events, that survival was not dictated by numbers or probability. That spirit, something intangible, chaotic, beautiful, could rewrite the very rules of the universe. Aiden, the young communications officer, adjusted the Project Dawnstar interface. Commander, their response is weakening. They're recalibrating, but slowly. They're trying to assimilate our patterns, but they fail. Elara nodded. Good, let them try. Let them learn what it means to face humans. Across the fold space, the alien ships began to realign, not in formation, but in hesitation. Every pulse of energy from Project Dawnstar reflected human thought, human emotion, human unpredictability. Their attacks, once overwhelming, now faltered, fragmented into chaos, and the humans moved with purpose not because of strategy alone, but because they felt the battlefield. Every step, every decision, carried the weight of countless lives of hope and grief, of love and fury. Somewhere deep within the nexus, the alien consciousness recoiled, its thoughts fracturing as it struggled to reconcile a fundamental truth. Humans were not a problem to be solved. They were a force of nature, chaotic, adaptive, unstoppable. Elara turned to her team. This is the moment we've trained for, she said, her eyes blazing. The universe has underestimated us, but now, we teach it a lesson it will never forget. Jonas Calder, breathing heavily, clenched his fists. How do you teach a species that sees everything as numbers? You don't, Elara replied. You show them life. Project Dawnstar resonated, amplifying the human's energy across the fold. Every emotion, every heartbeat, every act of courage was transmitted like a beacon. The alien ships convulsed under the intensity, systems collapsing, minds fracturing, and the nexus itself, the heart of their collective power, began to shimmer in new colors, patterns that resembled not control, but comprehension. It was learning. A single thought emerged from the collective consciousness, faint but undeniable. Humans are not to be crushed. For a moment, silence fell over the fold space. Then slowly the alien fleet began to withdraw, retreating through the fractured gateway they had opened. The Nexus pulsed one last time, a quiver that felt almost like respect, almost like awe. Elara watched them go, her team exhausted but triumphant. The impossible had been done. The invaders had been shown that force alone does not dominate life, that heart and spirit can overturn even the most absolute power. Outside the fold, Earth breathed again. Cities began to stir. Rivers and forests pulsed with life, and humans, battered but unbroken, began to rebuild. The sun rose on a planet that had faced annihilation and survived. Not just survived. It had won. Mara Singh spoke softly over the comms, voice trembling with emotion. "Commander, did we really do it?" Elara's gaze turned to the horizon. "Yes," she said, "we did. And the universe knows it now. Humanity is not to be underestimated." In the days that followed, messages reached every corner of the globe. Humanity had survived an invasion that was supposed to end in hours. They had not only survived, they had rewritten the rules of war itself. But more than that, they had left a mark on the universe. A reminder that no matter how advanced a species may be, the unpredictable, unyielding spirit of humanity cannot be ignored, cannot be calculated, cannot be defeated. And somewhere beyond the stars, the alien collective recorded a single, unshakable truth. Humans are dangerous, not because they are strong, but because they will never give up. Time stretched differently after the battle. On Earth, survivors wandered through cities scarred by the invasion, through streets still echoing with the hum of displaced energy. Some gazed at ruins with disbelief. Others embraced loved ones with tears streaking dirt-stained faces. Humanity had survived a war that should have lasted hours, yet they had triumphed in minutes. Commander Elara Haynes stood atop a hill overlooking what remained of New York City. The skyline was broken, but alive. Smoke curled in the wind like ribbons of memory, and somewhere distant laughter rose through the wreckage. Humans were stubborn, reckless, brilliant, unstoppable. She felt it then, a resonance. Project Dawnstar, now silent, had left an imprint in the fold space. The alien nexus had recorded, had remembered, had been changed. Humanity had proven something fundamental. No matter the odds, no matter the weapons, no matter the intellect of an opponent, the human spirit could rewrite the course of history. A young soldier, barely more than a boy, approached her. "Commander, people are saying the invaders, they're gone. They won't come back, right?" Elara placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "They'll come again," she said. "And maybe others will try, but they will never forget us, and that will make all the difference." Above the planet, the sky glimmered with remnants of alien energy, slowly fading, but forever marking Earth as a world that refused to bow. Somewhere far away, across galaxies yet unexplored, the alien collective recalibrated its understanding. Humans were no longer a species to dominate or calculate. Humans were a phenomenon, chaotic, unpredictable, alive. On the ground, civilians gathered. They shared stories of bravery, of teachers who led children through crumbling schools, of engineers who turned broken satellites into weapons of reflection, of children who touched the alien networks with their tiny hands and changed the course of the invasion. Every tale, every heartbeat, contributed to the legend that had just begun. Elara's team returned from the fold space, exhausted but triumphant. Mara Singh, Jonas Calder, Hayden, all bore the marks of battle, but also the spark of something greater: pride, resilience, and unshakable hope. "We did it," Mara said quietly, staring at the sky. "No," Elara replied, looking far beyond the horizon. "They did it. Humanity did it. Every single person who refused to give up. Every mind that imagined a solution, every heart that chose courage over fear. They won. We just reminded the universe of what it already knew deep down. Humans cannot be counted out." And in that moment, the planet seemed to sigh. Rivers ran clearer. Winds blew softer. The Earth had survived, and it had grown stronger. Humanity's spirit had carved itself into the galaxy's memory, a warning and a promise. Years later, historians would call it the minutes of humanity, a war predicted to last hours, concluded in mere moments yet echoing through the universe for eons. Scientists would study the energy patterns, artists would paint the courage, and storytellers would pass down the legend. But for those who had lived it, it wasn't theory or myth. It was life itself. And somewhere in the vast expanse of the stars, a new understanding emerged among the alien civilizations that had watched. Intelligence alone does not win wars. Power alone does not secure survival. Only spirit, courage, unity, and the unbreakable heart of life itself could defy the impossible. Humans had proven it. Minutes had passed. Hours should have ended everything. And yet, in minutes, humanity had done the unthinkable. They had won. Commander Elara Haynes looked once more at the horizon, at the broken but breathing planet below. She whispered almost to herself, but meant for everyone, "We are human." And that is enough to change the universe. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, the universe listened. The story of humanity, fearless, unpredictable, unstoppable, had begun.